object with ID 101. We would return an empty array, right? So every time you would receive an array. Not really. The browser does not do any looping. Apparently, this endpoint is giving us all this data. Like it's this when we fetch data from this endpoint, we are getting the data predefined in the server. So browser is not doing anything. What browser actually here is happening, the data is being formatted beautifully, right? It's because of this extension that I am using, JSON format. But apart from that, browser is only showing us all the data that we are receiving from this post endpoint. JSON holder.typecode/post endpoint. Then everyone check out in your browser itself. It might not be coming as beautiful, but use this JSON formatter extension. Cool. Okay. Now I want you to write. Okay. I'll give you better code. For right now, I want you to give me this. I have pasted you this URL, right? Now write the URL where the ID equals to 50. Right. Give me that string, like the endpoint, which should give me a post which with ID equals to 50. Cool. Simple, right? Yes. That's great. Yes, the query parameter is ID equals to 50. That makes sense. Great. Okay. I hope we are clear about this. Moving on. Okay. We will recap what I have said to you guys. A URL may also have a query string that is specified by a question mark sign, and then that key value pair for the query. Okay. Now, if everyone would get, we are getting ID equals to, let's say I have asked you 50. Now, if it's actually a key value pair. Now, what's the key? Key is ID. And the value that we are specifying is 50. Similarly, whatever we will be passing after this question mark would be a key value pair. Okay, and the key would be the property that we'll be fetching, like with the property of that object, which according to which we want to fetch the data, and what that property should be equal to. Let's say here the ID is 50, right? Yes, we can place more than one values. Okay, let me show you that. User ID equals to 1. And I guess we use that. And ID equals to 1. Does that make sense? See, here what I did, I appended 2 query parameters. So first what it did, it gave me all the posts which has user ID is equal to 1. Now, if you remember, we are getting 10 objects, right? Now, I want that 10 objects to be filtered and give me all those values where the ID equals to 1. Since that will be only 1, right? From all the posts which has user ID 1, there is only one object which has ID equals to 1. So yes, we can append multiple key value pair as query to this API path. And yes, that's how we do. We append multiple queries using AND operator. No, we can't do or. We do AND. I don't think we can do or. No, we don't do or. Difference between query parameter and API. Okay, so whatever comes after this question mark would be a query parameter. Okay, and this entire like whatever is there inside this after this domain name would be called as an API path. Okay, but an entire API path like here. first before the query parameter actually start, and after the domain name, we have this API path. We can have entire only API path. We can have API path as well as a query parameter. Does that make sense? Ms. Preet? We also, for subdomain question, we only do and we don't have an or operator. Who's this? Sorry? Miss Sujeet, yes.
There is two things, right? Query parameter and path parameter, right? Both these things actually get us to the final resource that we want, right? Am I right?
Can you? There's a lot of noise coming out. It's actually not audible, Biswajeet. Can you repeat again?
I mean, there is two concepts like query parameter and path parameter, right?
Query parameter
and path parameter.
Yes.
Both these two actually give us the right resources, right?
Yes.
Then what's the difference between them?
See, API path actually, this defines the endpoint where we can, in the later part of this tutorial, I'll show you a demonstration, like in the backend, how actually we provide a path and what does this query parameter actually does. Now, API path would, give us some data, let's say, in this case, what query parameter actually, when we can have API paths, right? Only API paths. Query parameter refines from that API path whatever data is given from that API path, right? Like entire URL. Query parameter would filter out for us. Does that make sense? Okay, yeah. I'll show you. We in the QTrip dynamic, we will be having code base for backend. So how in that backend, like when we hit that endpoint, what are the data we are getting? I'll show you. Okay. Wait for that. So there are both params which helps us to identify specific resource, like the source in the above URL. We have path params that identify a specific resource or resources. And query params, what they do, they sort or filter those resources, as I said, right? So since in this earlier case, when we hit post, right? So this endpoint, this post endpoint was giving us this array of data. So it's identifying a specific resource, which is this collection of data. Now, what query parameter adds to this path param? It gives us refined form of this whatever resources is available with that path param. Yes, web service utilize APIs. APIs are like web services. Not really. They provide us with some data, mostly, which we actually use it in our, we can manipulate on that data. We can do stuff with that data. So yes, ma'am, then how do we perform our based queries using HTTPS? Okay, perform our based queries using HTTPS API. We'll see that. Don't worry, we are covering that. I hope this up to now path params and how we are getting refined and filtered data for filter data from all the resources that are available from a path param, right? Does that make sense? I hope I did not complicate it. Now we have, okay, ignore this order. I have a question for you. Can you name all the parts of this website? So I'm sharing this. Tell me what are the different parts of this, part of this endpoints, right? Write in the chat box. What does this and this signifies, and like what are the path params and what are the query params? For this, both of this, I'll paste this. If you want. So here, if I write, it gives us, so see, we are getting, how do we actually know that when we write 2, it goes for ID2 or user ID2? We don't know that, right? So it will be mostly, mentioned in this documentation of JSON placeholder .typecode.com. So it's actually defined by the server itself. Okay. So here we are, when we write post 2, it's pointing to a particular resource, right? In post case as well, it's pointing to the collection of different objects, which is a resource in itself. And when I write /1 or 12, it's giving me that particular resource. Now, what it does actually in backend, it checks for this API endpoint. After post, it checks if there is a query parameter or it's asking for any number. Now, if there's a number, then it will actually filter out, not refine, filter out of the post data and get the a post which has ID equals to 12. Okay, I'm getting a lot more responses. Different URL, post, one is very param. Yes, Subramanian is right. What's the query param? Okay, yeah. What does null actually? Okay, in the initial, yes, it's yes. API path is one. Query param, we have user ID. Protocol is exactly. Cool, Suryanshu. Yeah, you can post it in everyone. You don't need to direct message me, Subhanshu. Or Suryanshu, sorry. Yeah, sounds great. I hope everyone is figuring out. Essentially, most of the time we won't be not be directly hitting, path params. Like most time, if we are targeting a bunch of data, we'll be filtering out data in most of the times. Well, you will be doing all of this in your Q-Trip dynamic exercise. So hang on, you will get a real hang of what I'm actually teaching. Okay. So we are having a quick recap. So everyone who gave the answer, kudos to you. All of them actually right. I checked. So yeah, moving on. Let me quickly introduce about HTTP request. Before HTTP request, for people who have attended the FE1 session, can anyone say what curl is? Like, have you used curl before in your command line in your Windows, or if you're using a Mac or in Linux? What does curl do? Can anyone say? Like, you can type it out. Curl is used to get a response. Yeah, kind of. Browser for terminal. That's a fancy way to say curl, what curl is. Anyone else? CLI language. Get a response. Not really. Curl can use multiple protocol. See, let me. Curl, come on. Just, it's not only HTTPS that curl uses. See, curl can use multiple protocols. HTTP, FTP, IMAP, POP3. Like, there are multiple protocols that a curl can use. What actually curl is, it's a command line tool to transfer data to and from a server. So we can send data to a server, and we can also receive data from a server. That server, like, since we are sending and receiving data, right, we are following some guidelines. Now, this guidelines are set by these protocols. Curl can use the various type of protocol, not only HTTPS. These are the various protocols. I'll link this resource to this Geeks for Geeks article in the end of this session. I'll quickly demonstrate what curl does. Now, if I go to my terminal, if I type curl and this data, okay, we have this API data, right? What it is giving us back? It's giving us back this user ID. Whatever you are seeing here, it's giving us here in the terminal itself, right? So, but this is what response you will get in Mac in Windows, you might get extra data as well. What extra data you might get, what type of response you are getting, what is the status code, etc. What are the body params? Like depending on what type of terminal you are using, it might be configured in a way, but every time you'll get a response. Here we are showing the data itself, but along with the data, there are many other properties that we get, right? For example, what will be the status code of this response, etc., etc. Like there are other details, but then status code data, the proper data that we are getting from that server are the major properties, I would say. Can you please explain the URL distribution of the slide you have opened here? Which Suryanshu, which URL you wanna see about this JSON placeholder? Slides, okay. See, it's a path since you can see this is the domain name. It's HTTPS protocol, and this entire thing is a path, right? Because it's pointing to a particular resource. So this is an API path. I don't see any query parameter whatsoever, but then it might have a query parameter, but here it's not. So vaguely speaking, it's the API path. This is the domain name. This is the HTTPS protocol that we are using. Make sense? So yeah, many people are familiar. For people who are not familiar, I hope everyone got what curl is. So an HTTP request is like a message string sent to a server. Now, okay, let me. I have not used. Okay, so this is our browser. Oh, okay. I'm trying. I hope not everyone is familiar with client-server architecture. So what happens in a client-server architecture? We send a request to a web server, right? This is a server. I'm just vaguely giving you an idea because you're in Qtrip Dynamic, you will be setting up this backend and frontend. So, and backend will be a server, right? So what will be happening? You will be sending request from your browser to this server. And when that server receives this request, it will check which type of request it's asking. Is it asking me to filter out all those posts, or it's asking me to give all the post details, or it's asking me to give a post with a particular ID. So then like check the request. It would operate something which you don't need to actually know at this point, but it does something, okay? And it gives us back the response. This architecture is called as client-server architecture, and this is a basic architecture, right? And while sending this request, browser follows like what we will be dealing. It will be following HTTPS protocol. Most of the time, it can have multiple protocols, right? But then right now we'll be using HTTPS protocol. I hope everyone is clear about this vague description of this client, where browser will be a client. Okay, if it's not clear, I'm writing. Client is a broad term. Under that, browser is one of the client. We can have terminal as a client itself, right? We sent a request to this endpoint, and the server returned us this response of this ID equals to rec. I hope it gets. So in this case, the client will be a terminal. In most of the time, our browser will be the client. Okay. Okay. I hope your doubts are clear, Subrinil and Suryanshu. +1 in the chat if you are okay and understanding what I'm saying. Cool. Good to know. We make a request to a particular URL, which runs some code on the server and returns us the result of the operation. As you said, it gives us, it asks for it sends a request to the server that give me this details or give me this data, and they, according to what the request is being sent, the server checks it and accordingly sends response back to the client. Moving on. I hope everyone is clear with that. Let's move on to the fetch API. Now, what's a fetch API? Now, one of the browser APIs is the fetch URL. Now, fetch here is the functionality which is being provided by our browser. Now, what it does, now using this fetch functionality, which is given by a browser, which is a web API given by our browser, we are able to send requests to any server, right? Using, I feel it's HTTPS only, but I'm not sure. But yes, we can send a request to a server. What we need to do, we need to write fetch URL. The URL will be the API endpoint, which helps us to make a network call to an external server to get a data. In this case, what we would do, we would write fetch, then this JSON placeholder data. Now, what it would give us, it would return us a promise, right? Since we are making a network call, for people who are earlier asking out where we will be using promises, like this is a very important use case. I guess it's like most extensively used because most of the time we won't be, creating promises, right? We will be dealing with how to, how to deal with promises when we get promises. When we are declaring new promise using the constructor, that part of the code, most of the time we won't be doing it. We will be getting a promise from a different server, and we will be dealing with those data that the server will be giving us, right? So what actually happens? This fetch URL, when we want to fetch any data from an API endpoint. So we would get a promise. Now, since this is a network call, we are not sure that how much time it's gonna get. Right? This is like the fundamental aspect of promise when we started out. Right? We did not know. Promise is actually a placeholder for something which will get in future when we are not sure. This is the actual use case. Since we are making a network call, we are not sure that the data might be very huge, right? It will be sending, the server will be doing something, let's say, calling a database, fetching it. If the data gets huge, the call, the bandwidth, it would take many time, right? Because the bandwidth would be how I would say, is limited. So it would get multiple calls, it would get the data from the database, and it would take time. So that's why it's returning a promise. I hope the conceptual ideation of what promise fits in what this fetch URL is returning us, which is a promise. The filtering logic in the backend. Yes, filtering logic means filtering. See, what actually filter means? We are having, let's say, 10 mixed number of gems chocolate, and I want to filter out the blue ones, which means from all those chocolates, give me all those chocolates which color is blue. And similarly, when we are trying to filter out, which means filter will have a condition. Here in this gems chocolate example, we are having condition that give me a chocolate which has color blue. Similarly, in API case, it would say that give me all those posts which has an user ID of 1. So it's picking up all those selected posts, right? Which is a filtering process. I hope that's clear, Bisuji. Please repeat. Which part do you want to repeat, Anurag? The interesting part about the fetch URL function is that it returns a promise, which means you can store the return value from an HTTP request to a variable, also consume the value like any promise object. Okay, fetch URL. Okay, yeah. So fetch URL is an API, which is, provided by our browser. So if you see, let me quickly give you an example. Okay. So I have my code sandbox ready. Now let's fetch that post data and show that data here in the, you know, here itself. So I'll write const posts, okay, fetch URL. Now, what was the URL? The URL, let's say I want to all the posts, right? So how I would do? Okay, sorry, that need to be in double quotes. So what I am doing, I am using this fetch functionality provided by a browser. I'm passing it this URL, which I was using to get all the post values. Now, what actually it will return? It would return a post, it's not post, it's post promise. Okay. So we're returning a post promise. Now, if I want to console log, like what I am getting, console.log post promise, I'll be able to see that. So not see it. We are getting a promise, sorry, which got fulfilled. Earlier it was pending, and we got a response. Now this response has data weight. See, it has a status code. It has data like okay, if it's okay equals to true, redirected equals to false, and promises for any URL which has defined promises for that server. Not every URL, yes, it depends on which endpoint we are hitting on. Fetch would actually always give us a promise. It like, you know, even if the server is not returning, it would encapsulate it in a way where we always get a promise. So if you say the return type, here it's saying promise response. Does that make sense, Suyanshu? Okay, yeah. So we got a response, right? Okay, let's do that. So since we are getting a promise, how do we actually check what the data we are getting? So I'll write post promise dot then. How do we consume promises? Everyone remember? We write a callback function and we write, let's say what it's returning, console log. Let's run this out, save it, check. We are getting a response object. Now what this response object has? The response object has this URL type, headers. What are the headers? It has a body. And we have lot many key property values, right? Let me check data.data. Ideally, we have everything stored under data.data. Let me quickly confirm that. Undefined. Why it's undefined? Let me check. Type post redirected false. Status text. It should return me this object, right? Let me check. Okay. Give me a second. Its body headers. What am I? Okay. I guess we are not using get headers. That's why it's not given. Okay. Let me check the network tab. See, we have a network request going on, right? Okay. Let me refresh it. This is a long time. Yes. So we are getting. Oh, give me a second. I'm not able to see it. Yes. So Okay, as you can see, what we are getting. Well, let me zoom it out a little bit. Yes, it should show us data. Why it's not? See, we are sending a GET request, HTTPS. What am I messing up? Let me confirm that. So, yeah, as you can see, if you see the network tab in your browser, the request URL is this. We are getting 200 status code. We are getting a get. Now, what a get is, what a post request is, we will cover that. So, what actually get gives us, it says that give me a response, like we are querying and give me I want to check all the data, right? So get would fetch us the data. Like we want to view it. We are not manipulating or we are not editing any data. So we are asking to view all the data through this get request. So hopefully it should print console. I'm not sure why it's destructuring or something. I'll check and confirm back. Okay. Yes. Give me a second. Do we have? Yes, I'll confirm back. There's some. Okay. Sorry. Okay. We're getting a response. Uh, it's actually sending us a JSON data. Would JSON or actually give us the data? Hopefully. Let me confirm. Not I did not see it. It's giving us a promise. Wait, what am I doing? Yes. Dot then function res dot JSON. Yes, I am doing it. I guess I'm hitting on the wrong format. Okay, can you do that? Do that in the console tab? Yes. Let me. Okay. Uh, it's giving me a response object. It should have. Actually,
recording in progress.
As you could see here again. Here. So we would have user, it would have like key value properties, right? Let me comment it out so that. So it's I hope everyone is familiar with multi-line comment. Right. Okay. So user ID, it would have any key which should have value. Give me a second. Okay. Sorry for the disturbance. So moving on, we would get a JSON, like JavaScript object notation, as a format of storing and transporting data over the network. JSON, like earlier we used to have XML and other thing, but then now we have JSON, which is now has become an industry standard. So most of the response that we'll be getting will be in a JSON format, just like XML. Exactly. Compared to async await, promises are advanced. I guess both are like introduced 4-5 years back, right? But both are equally important. Both have their own use cases. We sometimes, like according to the use case, we sometimes prefer async await, sometimes do promises. When to use what, you will learn that eventually. But both are like, both are equally advanced concept. We can't it's situation dependent, I would say. But yeah, both are ways in which we can deal with promises. Yeah. Async await returns a promise. Async await is a way where we can, deal with promises, if I would say. Why do you need a promise as API response? Okay. See, the main functionality, what promises, when I started out, I told you, right? We want, you understand what's the use case and why we're promising. Now, fetch, why it's returning a promise. It could directly use some data, but then the data, it's not something that we have locally. We are making a network call, and that would take time. Promise, like for something that we are not sure of getting right now, which is not synchronous, it takes time. We use promises in that functionality. Just like Srinivas, okay, can you please show the output of the promise again? Yes, see, this is the object that we are getting, right? If you see, this is the entire object that we are getting. I would repeat once again. Fetch would give us a response object. This response object has always a JSON method attached to it. When called, returns us another promise, which has the data value, right? So every time we would be getting all the data, we will be making then, because first we will be getting a response promise. The response promise can be resolved. It can be returns a response. Sorry, what I'm saying. Okay, first I got confused. Okay, I'm fumbling a lot. Sorry for that. Response from fetch is an object which contains a function JSON. So we are getting a promise. That promise gets resolved to in response. The response has a functionality called JSON. JSON function, which when called returns us another promise whose value resolves into a JSON object. It's returning a promise which gets resolves, right? Promise resolves into some data. I hope I'm not confusing you guys with all my stammering. I'd repeat once again. I hope these lines are like golden lines. Response from fetch is an object, right? Which contains a function JSON. So what we were getting here, if where is my code? Here we are getting a response, right? Response is an object here. We got response promise from this fetch. After it got resolved, we got a response object resolved into a response object that has a property called JSON, which when called returns another promise. So we have stored this into response prom. This response prom resolves into a JSON object which has the data property. +1 in the chat if that's okay. Basu, yeah, thank God. You replied. I want you +1s, guys. Everyone +1 in the chat if you totally understand. Okay. So we have this starter code here. I'll share the link with you. So I'll share this link. What you need to do, guys, you need to create a folder in your sandbox. Well, in session 2, under session 2, create code and create. Inside that, you would create, just giving you an overview, you will be doing right now, index.html, like this file format, right? Code Kanye, it has an index in index.html, style.css, and index.js. We'll create that. Don't write or manipulate on the code sandbox link that I'll be providing you. Let me copy paste that. We don't need to always we don't need to store that new promise in a new variable. We need to consume it because we want to get the JSON data, right? So it's like a two-way process. It's how fetch has been like formatted to give in that format. So every time we need to call on to then here I am doing an extra variable declaration which we could have avoided just by doing this. But then, and we don't have a prom, right? The same. Sorry, I just got that down. Okay. Code Kanye, right? We have index.html, index.js, style.css, and creating. I have pasted that code sandbox link. Please create similar directory structure. Style.css and another index.js. Sorry, this is actually my code. Index.js. I'll change my path directory to code plan. Index.js.
Actually, we didn't get the link.
I did. I did. Okay, so to everyone. Okay, I haven't sent. Sorry. People try to avoid personal pinging me. Sorry, the link. Okay. I hope I shared the right code. Okay. should have a pretty important. Let me check. Slash. Why my background is coming? Did I not link it? Hopefully it should work. Okay, so what you guys need to do? What am I doing? Okay. This is already bluish color. Pink. This is not linked properly. Styles. Is it styles? Yes, it's styles. Oh. Pink running there. Okay. So yeah. So what we will be doing? I'll give you 2 minutes to set that up. Up until then, we'll continue in 8:40. We'll give you 2 minutes. Once you set that up, I'll explain you. This is a very important exercise. I hope everyone is setting that up. It's really important, guys. Please do that. Yes. In your sandbox, we would have for this file format, right? Session6. Inside that, create a code Kanye and paste all this files code that I have shared you. And you should have something like this. Yes, please, you can ask it direct. Like you don't need to direct message me. You can ask to everyone. Anyone, if I am not, I'm busy in the session, anyone who has already figured out would be able to answer that question for you, okay? So I would really ask not to give direct message me. +1 in the chat if everyone has, like, people who have done it, created their own instance. Okay, people have done it. Yeah, we are almost over time. So let me quickly tell you what you need to do. So this is exercise which you'll be doing. Since I told you how to fetch data, right, by using fetch API from our browser. So similarly, you need to fetch data from this API endpoint, https api.kanye-rest, okay? Use the fetch function to get the response. So we have compartmentalized 3 functionality. You need to code for 3 functionalities. One would be fetch code, where you would write, as you can see in the comment, right? return a promise from this function using fetch. The data should be in a JSON format. Catch the error if any. So what it should do, it should return a promise from this function, right? Use fetch code and add code to dump function to display the code on the page. Now add code to dump. So once you get the data, right, you need to add that code, whatever you will be receiving, which will be a random code. You need to add that to the DOM from this PID. Add the string code as add the string passed as code as text of the P element. Okay. Now this is then a sync function. Okay, let me check what. Write a function code Kanya which uses the function fetch code to get the code and then display calling add code to DOM, given it in the starter code. Yep. I hope it's like I have sent you the API endpoint. It has the up until now, once you are done with fetching code and you are getting the data, ping once you write code for the fetch code. I'll give you 5 minutes. Cool. Okay, right now you just need to send me the data. Give me fetch data. Like write this functionality of fetch code where you get me the data which we receive from API Canvas REST. Do that. I'll tell you what to do next. That's cool. Are you able to console log that, Mohit? Cool. Okay. Now, can you tell me what add code to DOM would do? You need to pass. Okay. What? Okay. When you are calling fetch code, it's okay. We have the calls here only. Okay, is it? Okay. Yeah. Can you tell me what code add code to DOM do? Or like vaguely what do you understand? You can type it out. You can use a mic as well. Yes, yes. So all this functionality. So what this would do, you need to call fetch code inside this code Kanye. Code Kanye would be finally called, but inside this, you need to first fetch the code. Then once you receive the code, pass it to the add code to DOM. Then it would, like, what it would do, it would get the data and it would show in the UI by changing, like, okay, initially we studied about how to change the inner HTML or the text content of DOM nodes, right? Yes, yes. Yes, we did, right? So we changed, if you remember, we changed the inner HTML, we changed the text content. Here, you just need to add text content. Since we have already a P dedicated to it, you don't need to, create an element. You just need to change the text content of this para, which has the ID code, and do all this function call inside code Kanye. And finally, call code Kanye, okay? Is that clear, guys? This starter code everyone has in their like copy pasted from the sandbox. So I'm showing you this. What you will be getting with every refresh you do, there will be some random code that Kanye did would be showcased. So Where is my timer? We have 2 more minutes. I hope you can do it. Mohit, did you do it? Anyone, guys? I told you, okay. For fetch thing, if you are not confused, I am showing you the fetch code as well. How we are adding fetch. Okay, that's. People, are you not able to understand? Anyone who is not able to understand क्या करना है, what they need to do next, write 0 in the chat. I'll explain it once again. Okay. Okay, I'll explain you. So Biswajit, what you need to do, you need to fill in this 3 functions, okay? Okay, Biswajit, did you create all these 3 files? +1, if you created all these 3 files and pasted the code. Vishwapriya, did you paste the code from these 3 files and created similar directory structure? Okay, that you got it. So what you need to do, similarly, how we fetched the data from this JSON placeholder, right? You need to get the data from this API. So where did it go? So how we did, like similarly fetch how we used, right? We hit an API, we got a response object, we converted into JSON, then we got a promise, then we resolve that promise into a, this can be a data JSON, might be a little confusing. So we got data and we console logged it. Instead of console logging, you can console log it or you can return it, right? So here, return the data. So instead of here, you just return the data. This is how you return the data. Now, if you console log, what we would get. Okay. I kind of. It's getting a promise. Okay, sorry. Yeah. Yep. Okay, well, sorry, I forgot what you need to do. You need to fill in these functions. Where did the function go? You need to return the data. Here, return a promise. Okay, first you need to promise. This should, okay, ideally here, if you check, we are returning a promise, right? This returned a promise. This post promise you need to return. Once you return, oh, I'm forgetting this file path. So here we are returning the post promise. So you need to similarly return a Kanye post, like Kanye's quote promise here. You need to resolve that to get the data. Now that data should be passed to the add code to DOM. So that data would be the code actually, right? So, okay, let me comment out. Write fetch code. Get the promise. Then return the promise. It's confusing. Here, you need to first to call the fetch. Anyone who did it, please paste their code or give me the sandbox link. Code. You need to try to call the code. The promise should be resolved. Get the data. The data is actually the code, right? Whatever we'll be getting will be a code. Pass the code to, or pass the code नहीं, call कर लो. Call add code to DOM. After adding call code to DOM, it would, like, in the right hand side, I'll be able to see that code. Now this, how would you add? You need to get the element from ID, which is like get element from ID method use करके, then change the text content. Okay, people are doing fetch. Yes. Anyone complete? Is that clear, Vishwapriya and Biswajit? Or still not clear? My JSON is empty. Check if you're returning a JSON or a promise. Check for that. Yes, clear. Cool. Try to console log at every instance. Check where it's getting wrong. I'll check finally, but then I want you to also troubleshoot your own problems. Okay, that would really help you out on a longer run. But yes, at the end, I'll check that as well. Anyone is able to complete it? Cool, cool. Okay. Give me sandbox link if you are able to do anything, like you are able to print. Voila, you did a very good job. If you are not, we'll do it. But until then, I want you to try it until the time. Anyone who completed? Yeah. Cool. Cool. Yeah. I think like you did not follow the entire paradigm, but yeah, the way you are doing it's actually right. Good job. Good job. Who did that? Yes, I'm gonna Santosh. I'm really proud. That's very good. Fetch dot please add. Yeah. I can see that. This code will work. Don't worry. I'm not seeing this code's gonna work, but still, I can check that as well. Why am I not able to get? Please add fetch.html. Use this. Okay. Cool. Great. Yeah. Someone else also sent me code. Great job, Santosh. Hey, voila, that's great. Who did this? Yogesh. I'm so proud. That's really good. Anyone? See, ideally the output would be something like this. With every refresh, it would send us a response, like different responses, and it just prints out, right? With every refresh, it would fetch the data, it would get a new value, and we get new data, right? We get new codes. Now, one of my favorite of many things about what the Trump had represent to me is that people can't tell me what to do because I'm controversial stuff, but yeah. See, code kya hai? How to get data from object. How to get data from object. Which object are you trying to say? Okay. You are returning a response, right? When you're resolving that response inside code Kanye, call inside that dot, then inside the dot, then call add code to HTML. It will work. Where did my code go? So we get a response, right? We get a promise. We get a promise response. When you are resolving this promise, call add code to com inside inside the dot then itself. Then it will work. Does that make sense? Mohit. Great, Mohit. Great. I'm really happy to see. That's great, guys. People are trying to get it. Mohit, can you send me the code sandbox link as well? Similar goes to Yogesh and Santosh. Yeah. Send me your code sandbox links. Yogesh, back. Mohit, can you please that? Exactly. Cool. Exactly. That's what you can do. Mohit and other person was Santosh. Can you share your code sandbox links as well? We'll code it out. We'll do it. Okay. You might not have the entire time. But yeah, let me start coding. Okay. So what we can do here is from equals to fetch request and then that API. That was the link, right? Okay, so we can do dot then here. Yeah. Response dot JSON. I was getting data, right? Return. Now let's console log what we are getting. From equals to fetch code, right? Fetch code. Fetch code. Yeah. Let's just console log it. Okay? Console log from where is the sandbox link? Oh. guys. It should. Okay, I'm not calling code. You're not calling function, yeah, sorry. Fulfill. Code. So it has the code object, right? So what I could do from code, and it should be actually code to this. I need to resolve it, right? From dot then data dot log. Just check, guys. Like, see, I'm getting this code object. Now I need to pass this. If I write code, I'm getting this. Now instead of actually console logging it, I would like to call this to const code equals to data.code. Always try to console log. Console log is your all-time best friend. Now what I would do, I would call add code to DOM. Add code to DOM as the code. Now what add code to DOM would do, it would get p para equals to document or get element by id code. Right. Now let's console log that. That's fine. Good. I'm getting that P. Now let's check text content equals to code. Do that. Passing code as parameter. Exactly. We are passing code as parameter, right? Yes, I was just console logging to check that whatever I'm getting is actually right. It's just confirming it. It's the best way to do that. So I just wanted you to, since you are practicing and you are not initially starting out. So this console log would always troubleshoot where you're mistaking or if you're like whatever output you are expecting is it the right one or not. So that really helps. I hope everyone got how to do this. +1 in the chat if you do. Vishwapriya, did you understand? Viswajit? Suryanshu, please avoid direct message, please. It's something. No need to afraid of. Yes, great. People, whoever's Anurag, Yash, Abhishek, Shubhrani, Srinivas, Abhishek, Akshay, Nikhil, Bharat, Mohit said, right? I hope people are saying this. Great. Let's move on. Now, is there a difference between the two syntax of invoking promises? Try it and share on chat. So what we are doing, we are using then, yes, data.then, console log type. Okay, yeah. So guys, I guess you might have tried it out where what we are doing, instead of like here, we are storing the data, like whatever we are getting from fetch, right? We are storing in data. Here we are calling on then, and we are console logging. We are doing very something similar, but I want you to tell me, is both of them similar, same, or will they give us like some different format of output? Or like, is there any difference between the two of syntax of invoking promises? Yes or no? What do you guys think? I'll console log and I'll try. I'm not pasting it because I want you to troubleshoot on your own. Like, what do you think? Then I'll share the code. Okay, the lip says same output. What about you other guys? Mohit, Biswajit, Vishwapriya, Nikita. Nikita, I'd really ask you to be more active. Nikita, Anurag, Abhishek. Same output. Anurag says same output. Yeah. Take your time. Suryanshu, Yash, Yogesh, Jai, Srinivas. What do you guys think? What if error comes in res.json? I guess if we are having any error in this block, then the catch would catch it. Since it's a network call, so like the chances of getting happening something wrong will be here only. Here also we are having a catch, right? Now this style, anything goes in any of this then blocks. If anything goes wrong, this last block of catch will be executed. Similarly, since initially anything that might go wrong would be in this network call, so I guess both of them are equally handling errors, same output. Okay, good. Now let's try it out. If we are getting something same or different, we'll do that. This is one. Save it. Let's check. This is we're getting code. Absolutely. Let's check for this. We're getting code as well. Did we see? But for the first one, in the second promise is pending, it won't be catched. Yes. But I totally get your point. Here we don't have a catch block, right? But then once we are getting any response, right? It's returning this, the promise that we get after res.json, it's highly unlikely to not get fulfilled because, most of the time, this response that we are getting while this API call is being made, there is high chances of it getting wrong. Once we get any response, we are getting a promise, right? There is less chance of that not getting resolved or fulfilled, like at least not throwing an error, right? So if we miss catch here, it won't actually affect. But then it's always a good practice to have a catch block when you are anytime resolving a promise. Okay. Did we get same thing, right? We got a quote here. Here also, we same. Cool. For people who have said same, yeah, you are right. Suryanshu, is your question, is your doubt done? Yes. People who said right, yes. These both of them are right. We are done with the curious question. Okay, let me tell you about this get and post request. Now, before I actually get started, everyone +1 in the chat if you understand up until now. +1. More +1, guys. Vishwapriya. Dilip. Bharat. Yes. Great. So, okay. So there are many types of methods that we can do. But here we are currently focusing on 2 primary methods. One is a get, which what it does, when we send a get request to a server, it requests data from a specified resource. So it just gives us data. We are not doing anything or manipulating on data or what. We are just getting all the data that they are giving us, right? What they have, they will just give us the data and we'll be able to show that accordingly. So get, what it does, it requests data from a specified resource. But what post does? Now post send a data to a server to create a resource, right? So let's say we are having, so whenever you are filling any form, right? Like when you are signing up or like, we have this Gmail, okay. It might not open a tab, but let's say I'm opening it in incognito and we have like, this Gmail. What I'm trying to show is whenever we are filling in this form, right, we are sending some data to actually Google or Gmail server. So this type of data where we are actually sending some data, it would check here in this case, but let's say we are creating a new account. It's creating some resource in Gmail server, right? It's creating something. So at that time, the data will be sending will be sending in a post method. We'll be using post method. Does that make sense? Okay, I just want it. Okay, I hope it does. So what it does, whenever we want to send data to a server to create a new resource, we will be sending a post request. To make a post request, we can add additional params to fetch. Okay, let us try that. We have insert. Okay. Okay, we have a code sandbox ready. We can check on that. Okay. Here. Okay. Everyone able to see my screen? So here, instead, like earlier, when we were calling on this fetch functionality, we're only passing this string, right, which is the API endpoint to get the data. But the default format is get. That's why we're getting the data. But let's say here in this case, we want to send a post request where it will create a new resource. How would we do that? In addition to the string, we'll be passing another object. Now this object has some key value properties. I'll tell you when we will actually send this request, I'll tell you how this is being made. But for now, check this. We will pass this key saying that, okay, this is the method that we'll be using will be a post. Similarly, if we want to send a get request, we can do that writing get method and get. See, okay, here, if I write method get, it will return the same thing. Very see, same. So the default, when I wrote this get inside here, what I meant actually is that the default method, like if we write this or if we don't write, it won't create any difference because the default method that fetch uses is a get method. But since we are using post, we want to explicitly mention that, okay, we are we are sending a post request. We are using this API. So this tells that we will be sending an API. We will be sending a post request saying, I have this body. Okay, so what goes inside body? Whatever the data we want to send. For now, don't focus on what JSON Signify does. Actually, it converts it into this like server accepted format. Let's say, like, for example, I want it to, for example, it takes many numbers, let's say, and what we are sending is string. So this, like, JSON.stringify, actually similarly, what it does, it converts this string to number, so that similar case, I'm giving you an example. So what actually does, JSON stringify converts this JSON object into a format which will be accepted by the server, which is QArt frontend Heroku app. Does that make sense up until now? Like, we have method as post mentioning we are sending body. Body is sending the data. Okay, this is the data, right? The username and password. It's JSON.stringify is making it in a format which the server will accept. We are passing some additional key value pairs, which is a header. It says that accept, this is the content what I am sending you. It's an application JSON type content. You don't need to get into detail of this, but yeah, this is how we can send a post request. Once we send a post request, we'll get a response. Similarly, how we handled for get, we'll do that. Let me get the code here. Let me comment it out. Okay. I'm saving it. Okay. I refreshed it. Anything happened? Username already exists. Okay. It's through an error. Let me type something else. Alisha@gmail.com, and I want to give the password as password. Classic mistake of putting password as password, but yeah, let's do this. I'll refresh it. Why it's telling. Okay, username already exists. Cool. Okay, let's check what actually happened. So, okay, that's a pre-flight. What actually happened? See, ignore that the Alicia is already created. I'll try. Let me try Alicia. I don't know. It should create. Is it not saving? Why it's always showing? Sure. Okay, let's focus on how we are sending a post. So when we send, like, refresh, the browser, what it is doing, it's sending a post request to this endpoint, QCard frontend.heroku app. You can see this request method saying post, right? So in ideal case, it would have actually created an account for me. But since, see, whatever the data that we'll be passing, that goes inside the body, right? It would be here. It's saying that request payload, username is alishamohanty@gmail.com, and the password is password. And if we preview, it says that success is fault, username already exists. So what it says that, like, when we send the request, what the response that we got is an object which has a message property saying that username already exists and success is false. For different API endpoints, the response will depend on them, of course, but we'll get different responses, right? So yes, this is how you can send a post request. you just need to mention that inside the fetch, an object you need to pass, write method as post. Body may you need to pass all the data that you want to pass. And headers, it depends. But yeah, here we are adding headers equals to content type. Also, you can see, where is it? Yeah. See, here you can see the content type and application JSON that we have added, right? It got appended into the response headers. Okay, no, wait. Yeah. So yeah, we got string defined JSON. Okay. That should have actually worked, but then not sure. I hope it's clear how to send a post request. Is it clear, guys? Okay, let me give a breaker. Since it has already name register, it's giving me an error. But in ideal case, we'll get a like success equals to true and some values. And that message would have ideally showed. I guess I'm using. It's the response header. Wait. Where did it go? It's the response headers. Request header, but also has this thing. See, content type application JSON. Response type header also has that. But yeah, what we are sending is in the request headers. So we have the content type application JSON here in the request headers. Request payload. Yes, request payload is the data which gets inside the body, right? Like whatever we did inside the body here, Alicia Mahanti and password, this is the request payload. Is that clear? We are sending them this data, right? So request payload is what we are sending to the server. This request payload, password and username, what we are receiving as response is this object success is equals to false, message username already exists. That we actually saw, see this object. We don't have para, yeah. Don't have a para. Okay, now you can see it was not having a para, that's why it was not here. Moving on, that's what we said, right? Use the network app in the dev tools to inspect the fetch request. Is everything clear up until now? Yes, Suryanshu. Okay. Let me quickly tell you about, okay, I'll ask you to do this in your like post session. Let's quickly move on to async await. I really want you to understand what async await does. It's a very important part. We'll do the exercise later. Mostly I'll give you as a take home exercise. Okay. Okay. Let's move on to async await. We are very short in time. +1 in the chat if you are okay and you understand up until now. I'll move to async await. So I want a lot many +1 so that I can move on. Great. So what async await is. Now in ECMAScript 7, ES7, that is, introduced a new way to add asynchronous behavior in JavaScript. So earlier we were using promises, right? Now we will be using async await keyword, like the way we are handling using dot, then we will be handling in some different way. There's some slight changes as well in which we handle promises, like in which we deal with asynchronous behavior JavaScript using promises and asynchronous behavior JavaScript using async await. So in async await, we will use two keywords, async and await. I'll give you an example. Let's get started without wasting any time. Okay, this is someone else go. Okay. I'll give you a quick example. So what async actually does. Now async now whenever we have any async keyword written before any function, that means it will always return us a promise. Okay. Now let me write promise like function. So this is a function which is returning hello. And I am not writing async. It's a normal function. So what is its return type? Its return type. Okay, let me call it as well. Okay, it's return type. See, its return type is string, right? But when I add async keyword before it, it will return me a promise of a string. So whenever we append or we add async keyword to any function, it returns as a promise. Now, what I would ideally do, I would create a function called as call promise. What it would do, it would first, let's console.log, just to, let you know why we using async await, like the core difference between promises and async await. I'll write start, okay? Or else, for that, let's delay it after I just write console value equals to await promise like function. I wrote and I want to console log. Now I would ideally call promise. Okay. Now, as you can see, it's showing me an error. Now, what is that error? Cannot use await keyword outside an async function. So whenever you are calling anything which returns as unpromised, we need to wrap this, call inside a function which is having an async keyword. So it's kind of confusing. Now, first of all, this async function promise like function, asynchronous promise like function, it returns as a promise, right? This function call is returning a promise. So what I am trying to do is I am waiting unless and until this promise like function resolves into some value. Okay. Now I am consoling log this value. Look, earlier when you see we were getting a promise, then promise we would denify, like we would call on the dot then, and then inside that callback function we can access the data, right? Here what is actually happening, we are awaiting unless this promise like function resolves into a value, it would wait. So if you remember guys, what it will print. Okay, so it's saying start, hello, end. And hello is a promise, right? We see earlier when you are using promise, the order will be like always whatever is present inside the console, it would get print, right? And even if because the promise got resolved much later, it would get called, or whatever console statement we would have written while using promises, it would get printed in the console last. But as you can see here, we are getting hello, which is a promise. Since it is an async function, right? It's waiting unless this hello gets resolved into a value. Then we are console logging this value, and then we are writing end. The order remains the same. And whenever we want some functionalities where the order of execution really matters, we will be using async await. Does that make sense, guys? Yes. So here I'm writing const user equals to Alicia Mohanty, const data equals to new promise, resolve reject. Now this, we are comparing how we write promise and how we write async function. Here we are writing, we are writing so many code just to return a user, which is a promise. Here we are doing that in a single line, but for writing the same code, like exact same code, we need to wrap it in a try-catch block, write resolve, reject, lot many things. We don't need to do that, right? We just want this function to return us a promise which has some data. Why we need to do this resolve reject? So this async await kind of, I would say, abstract out all these lines of code by just writing async keyword before the function. Make sense? So to make any function act like a promise, add the async keyword before the declaration that I showed you, right? Earlier, when I was writing only function promise like function, it was returning a string. But as soon as I wrote async before this function, it returned me a promise. Now you can actually consume this promise return value like any other promise. So here, so now, okay. So when I would call promise like function, I can call on dot then as well. Instead of using, okay. So we can handle promises by using async await. Also, where did that code go? Yeah. Yes, we can write, I can actually use this instead of writing async await. I can write dot then data log data, right? Here the order would be, I really want you to see the order. Start and hello, right? But when we are using value equals to await, it was suspending the execution of the function call unless the function is resolved, like the function call gets resolved into a promise. Wait a second. Yes, the question. Await blocks the thread, not blocks the thread, it waits until the return promise is resolved. And simple promise does not. Yes, it does not wait. Like the entire, function call would be like, this call promise would wait, the scope would wait unless and until this promise like function gets resolved. Does that make sense? I need to add that. And in order to await to call back, we need to write all this logic inside another asynchronous function. Makes sense. What are the async will return if it's what the async will return if it failed to get the value of promise? So yes, so it would not return anything. It would, like, the function execution will happen, but it won't predict anything. So if I console log value and it does not return any, like like something happens wrong, it would return undefined. Because that's why whenever we write async await like code, right, we always wrap it around try catch block, because we don't have a dot catch as we had in promises, right? So if anything goes wrong, we want to get it, we at least want to know what went wrong. So this is how we will be writing. Return value. Okay. Resolve values. Cool. Okay, let me check. I guess we are almost done. I told you, let me quickly read it out. But any async function becomes even more powerful with the await keyword, right? With the await keyword, we can suspend the asynchronous function while we wait for the awaited value returned by the resolve promise. So what it actually says, with the await keyword, we can suspend the asynchronous function. We are suspending whatever this functionality is, which is returning us a promise, while we wait for the awaited value returned by the resolve promise. The scope will be here itself. And unless and until this value gets resolved, it won't execute the next line. That's what it says. The await keyword suspends the execution of asynchronous promise, like when it encounters an await keyword inside. With async await syntax, we don't need then catch finally construct. We can perform normally. That's why we use try catch error handling construct. Await avoids asynchronous programming. Not really. It achieves asynchronous programming in some different way in which promises used to deal. Promises handle, it does not suspend it, right? It would say that I'll later get resolved. For me, don't wait, go on executing. But await sees that, okay, you wait for me, I'll get resolved. Anytime I'll get resolved, that result can be either fulfilled or it might get rejected, right? So whatever it is, it would hold the execution up until that time.
So, but the async execution is holding, right, because of the await. So,
sorry?
In this way, it's avoiding the asynchronous programming.
Sorry?
This await keyword is making the program to wait until it got resolved. In that way, it is stopping the program to become asynchronous programming.
Not really. See, it's like that's why we are wrapping inside promise. It's like that's okay. So sorry, it's not many going. I got your question. So see, we would never have this functionality. Like we are wrapping the entire code inside an asynchronous function, right? So this promise like function, whatever is there, it would wait, not the entire program, right? So we cannot write await in the global scope. So we always need to write that inside a function, and that function execution gets hold. So whatever lines of code we would have later, it would get executed. For example, here, I'm calling call promise. Okay, let's say I was like console logging, console.log. Hello. See, it depends, right? See, the output is vague because at that time when it got resolved, that line of execution happened, but it won't wait, right? That's why we are wrapping it inside. If we would write in the global scope, then the entire execution of main thread would stop, which we don't want. That's why we are bound to write this await keyword inside an async function. Does that make sense? Okay, we are supposed to introduce, okay, convert the code. I actually completed, we are almost over time. We kind of completed await async. All these exercises, I'll link it in the chat itself. I guess we have very less time to actually me introduce to Q-Trip dynamic, which we will do it, coming session, which is on Thursday. So yeah. Yes, exactly. September. Only that function execution gets sweet. Yes, we will continue. Okay, I'll try to I'll make you revise this async await part once again. I hope you are having a vague idea of how this is work. We will do more exercises. But yeah, async await part will revise it. Try to do all the exercises. I'll link that. I'll mention that in the website itself. What are the exercises that you need to at least try since you have an overall idea of async await. But we will do that once again in the next session itself. Plus one in the chat if everyone agrees with me, and we'll continue it in the next class. I hope everyone understood it. I hope this is the link. Give me a second. Let me confirm that that's the feedback link. I guess I did not change. Okay. I guess let me stop my screen share and check. Okay. Guys, hold on for a minute. I'm not sure if this is the link I have updated. Let me grab the link from the previous session. Okay. The third session was there. Yeah, it was the same link. Still, this is still give me a second. Does this stop share? Okay. Please wait for a second, please. Slides. I hope this today's session was informative for you guys, and you got a hang of how to do at least the new concepts, and hopefully when you get started with Q-Trip dynamic, you will understand how to actually implement in real life projects. Okay, sorry for the inconvenience caused, guys. I should have checked. I just need to double sure that I am not using the old links. Yes, it's the same link. Guys, please fill in this feedback form. It will really help me know what doubts, if any doubts you are having. Thank you for joining in, guys. Please fill in the link. I'm eagerly waiting for your feedback. And we'll continue in the next session. Thank you, guys. Have a great day. Bye. Please fill in the form also. I'll wait for a minute. Thank you for joining in, guys. Take care. Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you, Shamprani. Bye, everyone. Bye, Biswaji. Thank you. Welcome. Bye. Okay. Thanks. Bye. Record.